Hey folks, before we begin the video, do check out MasakoX.com with some brand new merch. Oh yeah, and you'll also get a personal shout out video with every order. Cheers! Hey folks, MasakoX here. Chapter 79 will be out next Monday, and as per usual, I shall be going over my predictions for the upcoming addition to the Granolah saga of the Dragon Ball Super manga. Before you say anything, this is published by Shonen Jump and Shueisha, not the other guys. In any case, if you'd like to hear what we have to say about this and many other chapters in the Super manga, do check out our podcast channel Up on the Lookout for more detailed discussions where Haverok and I can sit down and take our time with things. And it's also our backup channel for any other chicanery that may go on in the future. Also Dragon Ball Super trading cards. Now, if you're worried that I'm going to be relying on spoilers for these kinds of predictions, don't worry. I can assure you, for this chapter, chapter 79, I'm not pulling from any drafts, leaks or spoilers. All of this is off the back of my own mind, as well as what we've already seen in previous chapters that are readily available. So you won't be spoiled here, as we look into the predictions for chapter 79, right after we quickly go over those from last month to see how well or badly I did. Now first off, I thought that the Saiyans and Granolah would call time on their feud in the light of recent events occurring, and yeah, I think that's a pretty much given now. It's become quite clear that the Saiyans aren't the enemy here in this particular situation. It took like Granolah, what, like 10 months to figure that out? But yeah, Granolah's slowly backing off from them and refocusing his ire toward the Heeters, those that had given him work but ultimately played him for a sap. I mean, yeah, I can see why they did. Next was Oil and Maki beginning to have doubts about their brother and his plan. Well, that didn't happen yet, but I shall be carrying this one over as per my rules. I get to carry over one per month, but only once. And I'll explain why I'm so determined for this to happen later. I then predicted we would find out about the battle between Gas and Bardock in 78. Well, that didn't really happen to a major extent. All we gleaned, or what we could tell from what was said here, is that Bardock didn't beat Gas by pure strength. It wasn't like a straight up beatdown. Some other factor got in the way that prevented Gas from defeating Goku's dad. What that was, we don't know for sure, so I can only give myself at best a half point for that one. Frieza finding out about all of this going down on planet Cerel? Nope, that didn't happen. Yeah, I will admit that was wishful thinking. And Vegeta teaching Granolah about his power? That didn't really happen yet. It was probably a bit too soon, a bit hasty. But the two of them did start to see eye to eye more, much more so than before. So something could occur in the future, but right now, it might be something different that sparks between them. Stop it. So my score for last chapter was 1.5 out of 5. Not the best in terms of predicting, but that's okay. The point I'm trying to make here with all of this is that we got things happening that we didn't initially expect. Not my first instinct. We want to be surprised, so, oh well, it's all in good fun. So let's go over again the point that I'm going to be carrying over, which is Oil and Maki begin to have doubts about Elec. Granted, this didn't happen in chapter 78. All the Heeters were still steadfast in the belief that what they were doing was totally justified, and that Gas is going to be totally fine in the end, for the greater good and all. The greater goodness of their plunder of riches, most likely, because hey, they're space pirates. Narratively speaking, Haverok and I desperately want these two to come out of this in one piece. We want them to live, and out of all of them, these two are the most redeemable, so that's why. It would be a real shame if they all had to fall in the light of their elder brother's selfish desires and careless disregard for anything, even his own siblings, just for own personal gain. How will these doubts come about? Well, these may happen when they ask about the wish that Elec made, and what kind of bargain he agreed with on Toronbo, the Cerellian dragon. Because remember, if it's a basic wish, you don't need to have the condition, but if it's something really big beyond the dragon's power, which is probably not that much, maybe akin to Shenron or maybe even less, you need to actually offer up something in return. Or something to back it up. Collateral. But yeah, when probed, Elec will either make some kind of lie-up, or dodge the question entirely. I know it won't be a major doubt, but it'll be that nagging kind that will slowly build up in your mind over time, eventually becoming too big to ignore. They will need to know, because remember, the Heeters are all about knowing stuff, and them not knowing stuff is probably the biggest irritation in their lives. And I think Maki and Oil are equally similar to Elec's way of thinking. They have to know. They could easily get the Dragon Radar back from Elec on the pretense of, oh, securing the balls again for a backup wish, just in case something goes wrong. Elec's not gonna care, he's already got what he wanted. Yes, I know this is starting to become conjecture at this point, but in terms of the story, both of us, Haverok and I, want Oil and Maki to prosper on their own, and for them to grow a spine against their brother. Number 2, Goku will not fight in this chapter. I think it's safe to say that Goku's place in the battle is done for the moment. He has no justification to get involved, save for a catastrophic failure from both Vegeta and Granolah, he having to step in as a last resort sort of thing. For now though, Goku's job now is to protect Monaito from coming to harm, or being captured by Oil and Maki, should they not be swayed in their blind faith toward Elec. Monaito will probably spout out some kind of comparison between Goku and Bardock whilst in the Saiyan's protection, just for comparison's sake, but again, Goku will not be actively taking part in action during Chapter 79. He did his part in Chapter 78 briefly against Gas, but that wasn't really for the sake of him wanting to fight. Gas went for him merely because he looked like Bardock, and Goku had to defend himself. That doesn't really count as a battle in my mind. Granolah came right back in to carry the fight on, so Goku, being quite considerate actually, backed off, leaving him to it. In this arc, Goku's acting quite maturely, and knowing where his place is right now, it's almost like the entire issues of Goku in Super thus far are starting to subside a bit. Like the supervisors and writers for the saga are beginning to actually understand the bigger problems with Goku in Super, harking back to the Buu Saga Goku, where he was at his most rational and logical. If you want to compare Goku to a superhero whilst not looking at the Funimation dub, the original acting of Goku in the Japanese version of the Buu Saga, yeah, this is the closest parallel right now. There, he acted like a solid individual, a leader, and now, he's sort of starting to replicate that approach about knowing what's going on, being rational. Good! But yeah, Goku ain't gonna be decking anybody in the schnoz next time out. Number 3, Granolah and Vegeta will bond more in the midst of the chaos. This one is probably the most obvious to me. From what we saw at the end of Chapter 78, the respect for Vegeta that Granolah had grew immeasurably. The gesture the prince made by offering Granolah the bean to head back in and defend his life and world was quite a big sign of sincerity. The prince meant what he said, and is nothing like the Saiyans that did attack Cerellian 40 years ago. He has changed Vegeta, and does believe in Granolah's power. Despite Vegeta finding out about what occurred with the acquisition of said power, the prince still didn't leave Granolah in the lurch to his fate, condemning him. No, Vegeta went with it, rolled with the punches, dealing with what he has. If Granolah has these powers now, he better learn how to use them or otherwise die. This is a really major step forward in Vegeta's maturity, and ability to focus his anger and vitriol on specific targets. Where this will go is that Vegeta will compound his decision, and the two of them begin to share stories of their past, realizing between them that they aren't so different. We know that already, that they are quite alike, but when things dawn for both of them, them actively consciously knowing, it'll act as a catalyst for Granolah to better himself, or weather the storm, whilst Gas is right there in front of them. It'll be odd to see this as the final battle, but it will certainly lay down the blueprint for what's to come later. With Gas in his powered up form, we know the end boss now. It'll be a question of how we get to the final battle. But what we do know is that Vegeta and Granolah will be the main combatants against this Heater menace. Number 4. We'll find out about what condition Elec placed on Gas's power. Ah yes! This one is the most juicy in my opinion. This idea alone is something that gets myself really excited for what's to come in the final act of the story. What was the condition that Elec imposed for the procurement of power that his sibling Gas was placed with, imbued with? Was it a straight up copy of what Granolah agreed to? Or was it something more drastic than that? Could it have been something else entirely? Well, you all know how much I like to have a little turning of the screws sometimes with my stories. Make the characters deal with heavy situations after a promising start. I know, we're really mean. But if it were up to me, I'd have it that Elec didn't offer up just Gas's life energy, but also Oil and Maki's too without them knowing. True, they're not strong or anything like that, but they do have life energy and a lifespan because, well, they're alive. Just trim theirs a little too, to add to Gas's gains. How are they gonna know? I know this is a bit of a stretch, but can you imagine this being the thing that makes Oil and Maki turn on their brother? Maybe going back to what I said in the first prediction, Oil and Maki go off to summon Toronbo on the pretense of getting a backup wish for Elec, but they find out what Elec agreed to. Ooh, that would get them scared, mad, or both. Of course, this could all be standard and Elec just basically copy-pasted Granola's wishing conditions, but more so. But whatever happens, we will hopefully find out the terms of engagement for the final battle between Gas and Granolah. Number 5. A search for the Cerellian balls begins. Again, why am I going with this? Well, this one is a little bit of a kick into some long grass, a punt as it were. But since the Cerellian Dragon Balls have that rather overpowered quirk of being able to be used immediately after having been summoned, so long as you can find them, of course, you can just spam wishes for as long as you want. Seriously, this feature or game-breaking quirk would get the spiffing Brit rather excited. But the question being now is that, who's going to be the one to do this? Find the balls, lead the charge as it were. Well, in my mind, it's one of two parties, obviously. First off, Oil and Maki, as we said in other points, for them to secure the balls again, since they have the radar to hand, ready for another wish on them in case Gas falters in battle. Some kind of insurance policy. And after all, as Elec said in Chapter 77, he does like himself a good insurance policy, and not a gecko in sight. But to the more curious option, and where I could see a MacGuffin occurring here that might spark debate, is that Monaito and Goku slink off to go and find them, using the power of Monaito's own instincts. Yes, somehow, don't ask me how, it'll be stated that Monaito just knows and senses the two balls and their locations at all times, so he can act like some kind of natural radar. After all, he was charged to protect them by the Namekian who made them originally. Perhaps these Cerellian Namekians have a close affinity with the Dragon Balls here since there are only 2 of them. It's hard to see the explanation occur, but I could easily anticipate them pulling this out of their butts. Goku and Monaito will go look for the balls, summon Toronbo, to try and find a way to strip Gas of his powers. Perhaps maybe Monaito will sacrifice himself, thusly destroying the dragon with it. Leave the door open for Granolah to stop the Heeters himself. Or Goku could just steal the radar, whichever makes for a more thrilling story. And Haverok's prediction is that Oatmeal will explain to Goku and Vegeta how Bardock defeated Gas. Wait, Masako, isn't this just a redressing of one of your other predictions from last month? Yeah, you could say that, but Haverok came up with this one on his own, so it counts. And it also has a differing catalyst. We could find the truth out about Bardock's battle with Gas via Oatmeal. But how does Oatmeal know about this since he wasn't there at the time? Well, Oatmeal could have found out via Monaito whilst Granolah was asleep, or perhaps found out for himself through other means. This is all possible since we don't know the true composition and identity of Oatmeal. Are they an alien just chatting through an eyepiece to Granolah? Are they the eyepiece themselves? A link to Granolah's own mind, perhaps? We came up with a discussion about this, but we still don't know for sure yet. But either way, Oatmeal has gained the information about the battle, and could be the one to tell both Goku and Vegeta the events from 40 years ago. In my opinion, I find this a little bit iffy, but since this is Haverok's own prediction, I'm going to roll with it and see whether it leads to anything next week. But whatever happens, these are our predictions for the next chapter coming out on Monday the 20th. Come back after that chapter comes out and see whether we were right or wrong. It doesn't really matter whatever the outcome was, really. This is all part of our modus operandi here on the channel, to conjure up stories and situations and be creative with them, with our place here on this website. It's all fun in the end, and I don't mind being wrong. It's all part of learning and understanding this craft to then improve upon next time. Think differently and whatnot. Ultimately, I want to be thrown for a loop in a good way, to be surprised with what comes our way. That's the point of a good story, you see, to keep you thinking, guessing, and wondering about what could happen. If I ever got it all right, that would make me sad. I guessed the entire thing, and I want to be surprised. But anyway, I'll see you next week for that review, and I hope you're having a good one. Take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you later.